My name is Maral Mamaghani. I'm a political artist, a jewellery maker, a craft maker and a visual artist. I'm from Iran. I grew up in Iran and I faced loads of discrimination as a woman and the patriarchal society. I faced lots of barriers in Iran. I had issues with the government creating barriers for me. So I feel I have a lot of layers to my identity. I'm a woman, I'm deaf, I'm a migrant, I'm a daughter. I have all these facets to my identity. And I've had issues in my life. And it's about how I've struggled with barriers in my life. When I moved here to the UK, I thought I'd have more freedom. I thought the barriers would be gone. I thought I wouldn't face any more barriers as a disabled person. But there are still huge barriers in society that I face. So the barriers that I face, for example, anywhere I go, I'm still labelled. And a label makes the barriers worse. Obviously, as a migrant and a political refugee, I have issues. I have barriers about getting interpreters. So my background is that I'm from Iran. And I'm afraid that they're a very strict Muslim country and Muslim government. And they oppress women. They force us to cover our hair. And they say that women must cover their hair to stop men lusting after them. And I disagree with that concept. So I was trying to challenge that concept through my artistic work and my MA degree show. My hair used to be very long, and I cut it and then made a brooch from my hair. And then at the same time I continued to wear a headscarf. And my question to men in my home country is that you can't see my hair under my headscarf, but you can see it on the brooch. So does that still tempt you? And then I got banned in Iran, which forced me to become an artistic refugee here in the UK. And now my work is I wasn't allowed freedom of expression in Iran. I wasn't allowed to exhibit my work. But here in the UK I can. And I want to express my work through everything I've experienced in Iran. I express it through my artwork here in the UK. So my idea for this commission would be about exploring people's identities, looking at women's struggles, women's oppression. And I've done this through hair. And talking about hair and faith and religion. My project was banned in Iran, which is a huge barrier for me because I can't go back home. So I have to stay in the UK. And that's labelled me as a refugee. And again, that's given me a whole other set of barriers. I feel that there's a lot of segregation in society. And I'd like to set up an intervention with people from different backgrounds, exploring their labels. Obviously, as a deaf person, we could understand their stories, understand their views on their barriers that they face in society. Also, I want to work with refugees, how they've struggled when they've moved to the UK. And they're still facing barriers. I have personal experience of this. It never gets better, the barriers are never completely solved. So I want to explore those barriers with them. And how we can look at removing those barriers or overcoming them. I know that migrants and refugees are still struggling in our society. So I want to look at stories of their experiences and then use their hair to explore those stories. When I was growing up, I had a material. Okay, so I want to look at hair as a material. It's important because each person's hair is unique to them. They have their own hair and it's completely different and unique. But your hair can also become a label and it can also influence your identity. Obviously, it talks about the patriarchy of men controlling women, and we'll explore that through working with people's hair. At the end of the intervention, and after collecting people's stories and their hair, we're going to make jewellery that forms part of an exhibition. I have another intervention that I would like to partake in, I would like to lead, which is about hearing people having more empathy with deaf people. I would like to see hearing people to understand and see barriers that we face. So I would set up an intervention in a room which is silent. You're not allowed to make noise in this room. I would set up a card at the beginning that says, welcome, everyone's welcome, but the moment you come into the space, you have to be silent. And you're going to have to face barriers that as a deaf person I face every day. And that shows that there are still barriers in society. So once you enter the intervention space, you have to use gesture. You can use basic sign if you know some. But through gesture, I will teach people how to make jewellery using their own hair, using their own experiences of labelling and being labelled by society and self-labelling. I want to gather their perspectives on labels and how that affects them and creates barriers for them. And at the end, we're going to make jewellery from these experiences that will also contribute to the exhibition. And the people involved in the intervention are going to have to find a different way of expressing themselves and a different way of communicating. And looking at other people's perspectives in an open space. And the workshop will be open to all members of the public to face these barriers. Thank you. So the first intervention I will lead, I will invite deaf refugees and migrants into the gallery. I want to talk about their stories with them as deaf migrants and deaf refugees. I can empathise with them directly. I want to translate their stories into written English. I also want to invite them to cut their own hair and add that to their stories and make unique work with their experiences and the barriers that they have faced and are still facing in the UK and moving to the UK. Maybe they didn't expect barriers, maybe they thought the barriers would be solved when they moved to the UK, but there are still barriers that they're facing. So the public intervention that I will run at the gallery is going to be following my rules. I want everything to be in silence. I don't want any talking or verbal communication. That won't be allowed in my intervention. So it's going to be my rules in the gallery at that moment. I want anyone to feel welcome. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Everyone's welcome to take part in the intervention, but you have to follow my rules as a deaf artist. You have to think about how you're going to communicate with me. You're going to empathise with me and have a deeper understanding of what the world is like for deaf people. We're going to communicate through gesture. And I will teach people in the intervention how to make their own jewellery.